give you a little bit of a background. Got it. I'll just give you a bit of background about Tina before I hand over to her. Tina works with, and is actually one of the founders of, I just found out, the Centre for Applied Anthropology, which is an NGO based in Kyiv. Tina has worked as an applied anthropologist for the past 4 years on non-commercial projects and as a business anthropologist for Ukrainian, I can't see what I've written there. Worked as a business anthropologist across Ukraine. She is and has been in Ukraine since the start of the invasion. Her seminar today is titled, as you can see there, Inside the War, What is the New Normal for Ukrainians? Tina's going to talk for around about 40 minutes, so there will be time for questions at the end. So please, as Tina goes through her PowerPoint, do think about what questions you might want to ask, jot them down, and then there will be time to answer them at the end. Just to let you know that the session is being recorded. We would like to encourage people who are here to come onto the mic when asking a question, but if you feel that you don't want to do that, then there is also the chat option. I should also let you know that Tina has put her email address in the chat, so if you would like to contact Tina after this session, if your question isn't answered or if you have another question, then her email is there for you to do so. Okay, Tina, I'm going to hand over to you.
So thank you, Emma, a lot, and I am happy to see and to hear all of you today. So I will try to show you how the life looks inside the war and what is actually new normal for Ukrainians today. It won't be a normal lecture about new normal. It will be like maybe sightseeing in one of Ukrainian cities, and I will try to help you to get into the field and you see with your own eyes what is going on in Ukraine right now. So I will show you 2 pictures. Both of them are about the war. Both of them are inside the war. And you could see that these pictures are completely different because the war is completely different. And getting into the field, I mean showing the signs of war. So feeling the rhythm of war. So, and seeing how people could adapt to the war. And the things people could adapt to and can't adapt to. So we will go to the city named Vinnytsia. It is located here. So it is 250 kilometers from Kyiv to the south. And it is my hometown, so I am spending this winter here with my parents and the baby. So my parents are helping me here. And I will show you this city from the perspective of people who were born here and from the people who witnessed the war here in different phases of this war. And normally when I tell people about my hometown, I tell them that Vinnytsia is a cozy city in central Ukraine. It is maybe a little bit boring because nothing happens here. So there are some ancient buildings from 19th century and maybe from 18th century even. And there is a fountain from our factory Roshen. So they made sweets and it is the factory of our ex-president. So he put this fountain and every summer people from all of the Ukraine come to see this fountain. And normally, actually, really nothing happens in this city. These pictures I made 2 days ago in the center of the city. So you can see people walking, children playing. Maybe these pictures look a little bit depressive because Ukrainians wear black and blue coats in winter and the weather was really ugly. But like the life is totally normally selling flowers, playing on the street, children, women, men, everybody. So it is a normal weekend in a normal, cozy central Ukrainian city. So where is the war here? And what is new normal in these conditions? So the main difference is that Vinnytsia is a home front right now. And what does it mean for us? It means that we think that the war is far away when we are thinking about home front. Actually, Vinnitsa became a home front in 2014. And you can still see the signs of this period in our city. So you can see the whole university that came to Vinnitsa from Donetsk. It is a big occupied city in eastern Ukraine. It was occupied in 2014. So all the people who work in this university and all the students, so they came to Vinnitsa, and most of them with their families. And that changed the situation here in the city. So there is another project connected with IDPs in Vinnitsa. So it is a mural. The idea of it belongs to Crimean Tatar artist called Rustem Skibin. So, and it is a mural about connection with Ukrainian culture and Crimean Tatar culture. It was also made about 2014, and it was not tricky. It was a best situation. So artists draw this painting, and then the library, they got some money for the renovation, and they just everything renovated in this library, and then they made this picture again, but not so beautiful. So there are another signs of the war that began in 2014. So something painted in black and blue everywhere. Or Veterano Pizza, it is a project made for veterans to get the work after they go back to this civilian life. So, or some signs on the street, it is written shelter here. So these signs appeared in 2014, but no one used these shelters in that period. So Vinnitsa was rare for those people who came somewhere from the east during a long time. But something changed on 24th of February last year. So everybody started to think that the war is already here. And all these pictures I made several days ago, a week ago, maybe 10 days ago. So these are pictures from the center of the city, and these fortifications are from February of the last year. So they are near some municipal buildings, near the police, and so on. So Vinnitsa started to think that it is not rare anymore, that the war could be here. And not only police stations try to protect themselves. It is a shop with scotch tape on it, and maybe till the summer in every house was such scotch tapes on their windows. And my parents still do have this scotch tape on their windows. But from the start of full-scale invasion, so Vinnitsa became like a humanitarian hub. A lot of IDPs from east, from south, they came to Vinnitsa and go somewhere west, to Western Ukraine or to Western Europe. And a lot of them actually stayed here. As I know, 44,000 of people stayed here in Vinnitsa. Most of them are from Donetsk region, from Mariupol also. And in the city appeared a lot of signs that show these people here. For example, centers of the support of IDPs. One of the left is called I Am Mariupol, and one of the right is called Donetsk Center for Children and Youth. So they were opened after the full-scale invasion. There appeared some artistic signs. So these doodles are made by an artist from Khersonska Oblast. It is on the south, and it is written Nova Kakhovka. It is the name of his home city that is still occupied by Russians. So, and by this QR code, you can just read the information about the occupation. He's renting a house in Vinnitsa, and the owner of the house let him to draw this on the house. And Nova Kakhovka is written everywhere in our city. This is the cafe I show you at the beginning of this speech. So it is called Perfetto, nothing special, but it was founded by IDPs from Kherson. So it is the big city in southern Ukraine that was occupied by Russians, and it was free maybe 2 months ago, several months ago. And they are selling the cake Kherson. And when Russians were gone from the city, so all the families in Vinnytsia tried to buy this cake Kherson at that moment. So first aspect of the new normal is that Vinnytsia became a home front and a new home for a lot of IDPs that changed the cultural landscape of the city. But is Vinnytsia really a safe place for all these people who came here and for all these people who lived here? There is another date. It is maybe one of the saddest dates from World War II in our city. Here you can see the square of the victory. It means victory in the Second World War. It is a big transport hub here. And on 14th of July, and there are two buildings. So the House of Officers, it is a concert hall and a house of everyday life. It is a Soviet building, so a lot of offices were based here, and it is a monument to pilots also located here. But on 14th of July, this cruise missile, there were actually 3 of them. So they hit the square. At that moment, I was talking to my mom. I was calling her from Kiev, and she kept saying, "Oh, what a strange sound." I tell, "Oh, no, that's a plane maybe. So maybe some trainings for our pilots." But that wasn't a plane. And she heard the sound like that. I will try to show you just a second. So this is this kind of sound.
Дивіться. Четверта ракета пішла.
So this specific sound. And after this sound, people saw that not a lot of were left from these buildings. So this is House of Officers, and this is this another building. And everything was burned, and 28 people were killed and 200 people were injured in this tragedy. And I will show you one more picture. Maybe some of them saw this picture in media somewhere, but I have to warn you that it is very sensitive. So there is a picture of a 4-year-old girl that was killed in this tragedy, and she was from Kiev. So they came here with her mom because they saw that Vinnytsia is a more safe place than Kiev at that time. And I went to the place several days ago. So right now it looks like that. You can see all this crushed buildings. But you can also see a lot of people still here because it is still a transport hub. But when you will look closer, you will see another amazing thing. So here on these posters, you can see we are open. We work here. We just moved our place, still working. So all the businesses that were located in this building, so they keep working. And the life is like never stop. And this is another building not far from that. So people get married here. I don't know how to call that, like a city hall, but not a city hall. So it is a marriage house. And it got its renovation maybe for the first time from the Soviet era. So new windows. And people really are still here. So they are crossing the square. As I know, maybe 30,000 people cross the square every day. So the second new normal in my hometown is that home front doesn't mean safe. And another thing that is closely connected with war is air raid LRT. So in Ukrainian, it sounds like повітряна тривога. I could translate it like air anxiety, and it sounds really freaky. So, oh, it is anxiety. Oh, yes, it is anxiety. So stay home. Oh, okay, stay home. And I will try to show you this sound also. Just a second. It is really ugly. Oh, sorry. Just a second. They need to show you this advertising. So several times a week, several times a day, we hear these ugly sounds all the time, everywhere. So I will stop it. It is really ugly. For me, it is a signal to hate Russians at that moment. Besides of the sound in the street, we have the sounds in our phones. So we have a special app called Air Anxiety in Ukrainian. So, and you just know that, okay, it started. And for example, when you're sitting in a cafe, in one moment you hear the sound from the phone first and then from the street. And so we are reading a lot of news. Mostly we are reading this news from different Telegram channels. It is a messenger like WhatsApp. It is widespread in Ukraine. And so in these channels, always when this alert starts, so you can see this map. So with the red are those districts where the alert started. And besides, you can see some information. So there is a risk of a missile attack, or just a plane is in the air somewhere in the territory of eastern Ukraine. So a Russian plane is somewhere there. So, and you can read and you can just see the risk. Whereas when it is just a plane, okay, you can do your all that you wanted to do. When there is a risk of a missile attack, okay, let's stay home. Actually, no one goes to the shelter, so we just stay home, or don't stay home and do our normal things as we done. And there are a lot of memes according to the topic. So it is written like me, my plans for a day, and the dog is irritates LRT. So because when the LRT starts, a lot of businesses don't work. For example, banks don't work. And so municipal staff don't work. And just you sit and wait till they will be open. And there are another jokes like to feel that this new normal in Ukraine. So it is written that life in Ukraine right now is like that. So a dialogue. We don't work during the mass missile strikes. Do you mean you don't work during the air raid LRT? Oh, no, we are working during the LRT. We just don't work while the rockets are falling here. So it is our life today. So we are waiting till the end of the LRT, and you can see a lot of signs everywhere. So in the bookshop, it is written that it is closed during the LRTs. In the library, it is written that it is closed during the LRT, and the nearest shelter is somewhere there. Or it is a part of a marketing. So it is a cafe not far from this Victory Square, and it is written that come to our cafe because it is in the shelter. So it is in the basement, so it is a shelter. So spend the LRT here. Everything is closed, so just spend time in our cafe. So new normal 3. Air alerts are different, and you can spend them different. Some of them, they means really horrible things, and some of them are just the element of the day routine. Just you don't know in what case will be what alert. So blackout, another new normal for Ukrainians. Russians started to attack Ukrainian infrastructure maybe from in the autumn, from November or from October, I don't remember. And we have huge problems with electricity and blackouts. Normally, it looks like that. Every evening in Vinnytsia appears such a sheet with information. It is sheet when you can see in what times will be electricity and in what time there will be no electricity. Normally it is 4 hours without electricity and 2 hours with electricity. And you can change, and you can see these hours in the evening. So, and we also have a lot of memes, for example, so we have our dinner with candles and we are praying like the famous person on this photo. We wish all of them to disappear. So these kinds of memes. And sometimes there are different situations when in your house there is no light, but in the house in front of you there is all the light and you just got anger with that and you don't know why this happened. It is because of different lines with electricity. And these pictures were made by my bestie, my best friend. She lives in another part of the city, and she tries to catch these blackouts from her window. So this is how the city looks during these blackouts. And a lot of things, they just changed their meaning for us. For example, these like New Year lights are not the New Year lights, are everyday lights for Ukrainians. And we try to make our life bright, yeah, with that. So this is also her pictures from the New Year, actually, a Christmas tree. So she was trying to catch it with the camera on her phone. And on the right, there is a Christmas supper, traditional for Ukraine. So with traditional dishes, also with candles, because they started it at 6 p.m. and they turned off the light at 6 p.m. So, but being without electricity means also being without mobile internet, and not mobile internet, without internet at all. Now they have some just special devices and they can maybe 4 or 3 hours they can save the electricity. But first several months means no connection at all. And it was horrible for people who tried to work, and it was horrible for people who just wanted to spend these 4 hours some way. Being without electricity means that people have these types of stoves, not gas, but electrical. They have no opportunity even to drink tea. So they were buying these touristic stoves to make the hot water for them. In some buildings, the pumps, they also are connected with electricity and not with the whole system in the city. And when there is no electricity, there is no heating and there is no water, and you just sit for hours heating Russians. Another problem in the buildings with a lot of floors, the lift doesn't work, and these photos are not from Vinnytsia, it is from Kiev. So people tried just to put some things for those people who appeared in these lifts when the electricity was cut down. So you can find like crackers and water and something else there. And there is a problem, for example, for people with small children. When you live on the 10th floor and you have babies, you just can't go with the stroke down. So, and my best friend, she has twins and she lives on the 7th floor, and she just can't get down with them and can go for a walk, whereas when there is no electricity. Another problem, electric transport doesn't work also, and you just can go by foot or can order a taxi, but no internet, no taxi. So you just go by foot. Waiting again. So we are waiting electricity to work again. And the other sign of this period is generators everywhere in the city. So it is written that pharmacy works even when there is no electricity. We have a generator. It is also a marketing things. So generator, and I'll try to show you this sound. Like for me, it is one of the sounds of the war, as well as the air alerty. So I tried to do these videos. So this ugly sound everywhere, and there's no electricity to the whole street, which is the street, and you hear this sound everywhere. Or in the evening, it sounds like that. Game, the game, the game, the game. Very, very loud everywhere. So it was the last video. I go back to the presentation. And a new thing appeared in the streets. It is called Unbreakable Point. It was an initiative of the president, the government. So in municipal buildings who always have electricity, there are like points when you can charge your phone or drink something hot, or just they have heating. They could be inside the building or outside the building, and they have generators or just have electricity. And you can go there and to spend these 4 hours there, or to work there, or just to be there with your kids or something else. So new normal number 4, blackout is a way of life right now, because you are just, when you have electricity, something strange happens in your head. You're just waiting it to be over. So, and the last thing is about solidarity. So you can feel it everywhere and you can see it everywhere. In the cafe, you can see QR codes for the donations. In your flat, you can see like it is written here. So we are making entrenchment, it is a hard word, candles. So just put your cans here and we can use them for Ukrainian army. So in the shop, you can see these things. So it is like a cartridge cases. So, and people are selling it and trying to get money for the armed forces of Ukraine. Or you can see like burgers, and it is written, so we don't serve orcs here. So in Ukrainians normally called Russian orcs. So everybody can come except them. Or you can see so coffee, tea, but for people from the armed forces, they are for free. Or another option, so you can buy something in this cafe and for the people from the armed forces, and they will give this cup of coffee, for example, for such a person when he or she will come to the cafe. Or, for example, it is written on the bookshop, so people from armed forces have discount here. Or and there are a lot of such initiatives from Ukrainian business. So new normal number 5, solidarity is an everyday practice now, and actually it is a way of waiting, because when you hate so much, you just convert this hate to the donations or to something to make the victory closer, because all of maybe the main thing you are waiting for is the victory. So almost a year we're waiting for this victory, and we try to do something small to make this victory closer. And we are always joking that every day you get up in the morning, you are one day closer to the victory. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Tina. That was really, really interesting, really eye-opening. I'll open it up for questions. So please do put up your hand if you have a question, or alternatively type it into the chat. Whilst people are thinking about questions, I have a couple to get things started. And it's based on the last couple of slides you have. I was going to ask you anyway about. Can you hear me okay, by the way, Tina?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I was going to ask you anyway about community and how a sense of community has developed since the invasion, and you kind of covered it in the end. You said that there's a very clear solidarity between people, but it raised another really interesting question, and that is about othering, which is something that as an anthropological group you look at, don't you, with your NGO, is this notion of othering. And how does that work with what you call orcs or what we know as Russians? So 2 questions around that. First of all, how does that notion of othering orcs, how is that articulated in the community, at the community level, not just through signage and that kind of thing, but or even through the media? Are there addresses by the president? Are there media articles that create that othering, that kind of thing? So that's one question. The second question is a bit more complicated, and that is, what is the situation and the new normal like for the Russians who I imagine live in Ukraine at the moment? Because presumably there are Russians that live there because it's so close and because of the history of the country. And how is their feeling of solidarity affected by the invasion? How is their solidarity with the Ukrainians, and how is that national identity being articulated and formalized at the local level?
Thank you for your question. They are not easy one.
No,
So
sorry.
I will try to answer. So first, about solidarity. From the beginning of the full-scale invasion, media really made a lot. So in this othering, first of all, they started to write Russia with small letter R. So everywhere in Ukraine, we don't write it with a big letter because. So these naming orgs are also from media and from memes and from media. So it is like a normal words here. And so just this was a process that didn't become normal in a moment. So first, there was a narrative about good Russians. So there are bad Russians who support Putin, and there are good Russians, Russian liberals who are not so bad, and they have their solidarity with us. But then this narrative also changed, because now most of the people are talking that there is no good Russians. They did nothing. They didn't protest on the streets. They didn't stop them. They do nothing. Why should we think they are good? And so this othering, it became more clear, because all the Russians are just Russians, and we don't want to communicate with them anyway. And just about communications. So a lot of Ukrainians, sure, they have their relatives in Russia. And at the beginning of this full-scale invasion, they communicated a lot, because just people in Russia were asking, how are you? And people in Ukraine were answering, you are bombing us. And there were a lot of family conflicts, and I saw some researches, quantitative researches, that shown that most of the families who had these connections between Ukrainian families and Russian families, they stopped this communication at all, because it was a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of propaganda, and just people stopped communicating with their relatives, because it has no sense, because you just showing the pictures from your window and you hear that, oh no, that Ukrainians are bombing you, not Russians. And so this is how it looks from the inside. It is a typical situation. It also happened in my family. So when we were escaping from Kyiv, my aunt was telling that, oh no, this is not Russians, this is Ukrainians in Kyiv. They are bombing like civilians. It was on the 24th of February last year. So
and Tina, is that the propaganda that's going on within Russia?
Yes.
That's the impact of that propaganda.
Yes,
from
yes,
the side
yes,
of it.
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
okay.
But about Russians in Ukraine, honestly, I don't have Russians in my beside my friends, so I can't tell you certainly, but there is this point that no matter what nationality you are and what language are you talking, so maybe you could be Ukrainian and speak Russian, no problem, but the important thing is, what are you talking with this language about? And so what is your position? So when you have Russian roots, not a problem, just support the army, donate the army, and it's okay. But it is like an ideal situation. In the real life, there are some conflicts. There are conflicts between IDPs and the cities where they live in now. So between East and West, between East and Center, between those people who were under Russian propaganda from 2014 till 2022. So these conflicts still are, but I think we can't ignore them, but maybe this solidarity focus is much more stronger anyway.
Was that the same situation when you were in Kyiv? Presumably there are more Russian citizens in Kyiv than there are where you are at the moment, because it's so close to the border.
It was the same, just it was not about Russian citizens. It was about Russian-speaking people. So now the quantitative research definitely shown that there are less and less Russian-speaking people during the last year. So people are changing their language to Ukrainian, and just it is a little bit funny. So because on the street you can see a lot of people badly speaking Ukrainian, and they are Ukrainians who just all their lives spoke Russian language. So that's true.
Right, that's
not
really
about the origin, it is about the language. And
that's incredible that people are able to transform their identity so easily because they're shifting their language. That's really interesting. Any questions from the room? Can't see any hands up. Anyone want to ask a question? Marina, yes, please.
Hi, yes, hi. Hi, thank you so much for that talk. That was extremely interesting. I wanted to ask how people are dealing with these strong emotions of hatred. Are you finding any psychological help? Are you finding consultation in friends? I mean, what are the things that are kind of remedy these really intense emotions, this trauma that you're living through?
Thank you for your question. So there are a lot of volunteers, actually, psychologist volunteers here. There are a lot of volunteers who are supported, for example, by European Union. So if you want to get this help, you can get this help. Another thing is we don't have a tradition to ask for such a type of help here. And maybe those people who need it very I'll try to formulate it. So those people who really need it, they won't ask for this help. And those people who are much more safe, they ask for this help. And this is not a very good situation. So there is an option, but not everybody can use this option. And I'm talking not only about civilians, also about those people who were in armed forces. There is so no mass rotation, but still there are people, for example, who fight from 2014. So, and a lot of such people, they really need help after all that they have seen. But there is no tradition to ask for such a help, and it is a problem, really. But really, a lot of NGOs, a lot of international organizations, they try to shift this focus.
Tina, can I just ask one last question? If religious communities and organizations play a role in that help as well?
Yes, a lot. So I forgot to tell about that. So all the religious organizations, it doesn't mean whether they are Muslims, Christian, or any other religion. So they really help in churches and other buildings. There were hubs for IDPs from the beginning of the war. A lot of them are helping Ukrainian army. A lot of them are helping people who suffered from the occupation. And so they really make a lot of things, a lot of good things. Another problem is inside the Orthodox religion in Ukraine, because historically we do have a Moscow Orthodox Church in Ukraine, and this part of church in a lot of cases is still place of Russian propaganda. And now we have just criminal cases when they found a lot of materials from Russia in these churches and monasteries. And so we do have this problem, but it is only about this part of churches and not about all of them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Tina, have you seen that people are abandoning the church or abandoning the Moscow Orthodox religion because of the link to Moscow?
Oh, it is a hard question again. So
Sorry.
our previous president, so he got the thing called Tomos. So it was a very important aspect of his policy. So it is he got it from this Central Orthodox Church, and it helped to create an independent Orthodox Church in Ukraine. So we call it like ПЦУ, Помісна Церква України. So and a lot of churches, they just came under this umbrella church, but not all of them. And those who didn't come to this umbrella, in these churches, we do have problems. So they didn't come at that time, and they don't want to change anything right now. And not all of them, but some of them, or maybe a lot of them, are just under the Russian narrative here. And it is a problem.
Yeah, I can imagine. Any other questions from the room? There's one in the chat from Christine, and she said, deep stuff. Thank you for sharing. The ugly sounds and the feelings of hatred, apart from prayer, and you may already have answered this, Tina, but she's also asking, how is the community managing everyday trauma? Do you feel that you've answered that already, or is there anything you want to add? Is there any more micro support, I suppose, at the family level, of families really coming together as nuclear units? We see solidarity in the community, but is it happening at the nuclear level as well?
Micro level. So, well, there is, so when the war began, a full-scale invasion, a lot of people, they just moved somewhere with their families together. For example, to the Western Ukraine, or people who lived in East went to their relatives in the West. And from the first side, you can think about this support. So people are hosting another people, and it is really a supportful thing and important thing. But when you live 2 months in one room with 5 people, so it is not about the support anymore. It is really hard. So on micro level, it is like a love-hate all the time. So partly you support each other, and partly you just want everything to go back like it was before the full-scale invasion. But normally when you have this traumatic experience, you just talk with your close people. So maybe these are your relatives, maybe your friends. You just try to share in these micro communities, not with the psychologists, yes, with micro communities. For men, there is a practice mostly just to share this information and drink a lot. It is a problem also. And so they don't have any other, they don't know any other options without alcohol, how to talk about these traumatic things. And that's also true.
I think that's quite a common finding in situations like this, isn't it? That there's an increase in alcohol consumption in certain areas. Yeah, okay, that's really interesting as well. There is another question in the chat. This is from Take. Thanks, Take, for asking one. It's gone. Thank you, Tina. Thank you so much, Tina. It was really mind-blowing things to know about the reality in Ukraine. This is the question. What did Ukrainians who live in Western Ukraine think about the identity of those people who live in Donetsk and Luhansk before the war, and how have those ideas changed through the war?
Another difficult question. So there are several narratives. So the first one, so we're helping people, Ukrainians who suffered from Russians and who lived in Eastern Ukraine, and they're Ukrainians and we have to help them. Another narrative is those people, they speak Russian, and why did Russians came to their territory? Maybe they wanted to, and now they are hiding here in Western Ukraine. And why, for example, my husband from Lviv has to go to armed forces, and this random man from Donetsk doesn't go to armed forces. It is not normal. So this situation is really complicated. It has a lot of levels between the Russian speaking and Ukrainian speaking, between more religious regions and less religious regions, between those who came and those who host, and those who had an experience of Russian propaganda and those who don't, those who had an experience of Soviet Union for 80 years and those who had an experience of Soviet Union for 60 years. There is a difference in different regions of Ukraine. And sure, there are conflicts. Sure, there is solidarity. So it is like not black and white. It is always different. It has a lot of colors. It has a lot of cases. There is a lot of rumors about IDPs. So they are bad, they did something bad. And there are a lot of good stories about IDPs. So they came and they helped and they changed something when they came to the city. For example, they opened a cafe and created some work a space for people who live there, or did something, or rebuild the building, or did something good. And there are bad stories, and it is always black, white, gray, yellow, red, and all other colors. So it is not easy. I can't answer this question in another way. So it is a very difficult question.
Yeah, I'm sure it is quite, as Take says, it's a complicated problem, isn't it? And it's such an enormous country, really, and there must be different dialects within it and different identity groups within it. But is it the case that Russian is a second language in Ukraine, or does it depend on side? Like Polish is on one side, and how does that work in terms of?
It is a widespread language, but not an official language. So it is the language, officially it is the language of the minority. And there were some political parties that supported by Russia who wanted just to make the Russian language second official, but no. So we have one official language, it is Ukrainian. And the other thing is traditionally, after all the years of Russification by Russian Empire and by Soviet Union, so we really have a lot of people speaking Russian, but I might say that it is a Ukrainian way of Russian. So Russians will hear not the accent, but another way of speaking this language. Yes, it is true. But I already told you that there is a dynamic right now after the full-scale invasion for people to refuse from using Russian language in their everyday life. And this tendency is, you can feel it in the streets even, so.
I can completely imagine that. There's another question, this time from Alina. She says, thank you for sharing these insights and giving us a better understanding of what the everyday in Ukraine looks like. Could you please say a couple of words about the Ukrainian imaginations about the future and the future of Eastern Europe in general in the post-war world? That's a great question. Thanks for that.
First of all, we are waiting for the victory. It is maybe the main image of the future. And so when the full-scale invasion starts, we stop to plan, because you can't plan anything. You don't know what will happen tomorrow. And you don't plan your career path. You don't plan your vacation. You don't plan anything. You just hope the war to end, and then we will see. So sure, Ukrainians want to be in the European Union, so we have data about that. Sure, Ukrainians want to be in NATO, we have data about that. So after the war, but are we imagining this world Maybe no. So we just want the war to stop. And there are a lot of conversations, like kitchen conversations. So will Russia separate into pieces? So what will be with this country? Will Russia do it again? So do we have to wait for it to repeat again? So what could we do for that not to happen? So, and so we don't have the clear image of this future, but we know that the future starts when the war ends.
Fabulous. Thanks, Tina. There's another question. Thank you for the presentation. What would you say about the Crimean problem? There are so many social issues for a long time to work with. And that's from Olga. Thank you, Olga.
It is a problem. I can say that it is a problem. So maybe one from 2014, actually, we're not talking about Crimea enough, as for me. So it hurted. A lot of us have like memories about spending summer in Crimea. So a lot of us know something about Crimean Tatars and them losing their home for the second time during 2 centuries, during 100 of years. But we didn't talk about Crimea enough. And now, so when we saw that Russians can't get Kyiv in 3 days, and when we see that our army could make counterattack, and when the head of the state started to tell about returning back our territories, maybe I think that inside Ukrainians believed in that. So believed that Crimea could be returned. And it is like just the start of these discussions. What to do with the Russians in the Crimea? So with those who are living there from 2014, or with those who are living there from the 1950s in the Soviet Union. So it is also a very difficult questions, but I think we just start this discussion about returning Crimea back.
Thanks, Tina. There's another question from Ross. Thanks, Ross, for your question. He says, or she says, sorry, thank you so much for doing this talk. It's been really interesting. There's been conflict in Ukraine since 2014, yet Western narratives sometimes suggest that conflict only started with the invasion last year and only acted against Russia following this. Do many Ukrainians feel anger towards the West for this? It's a great question. Thanks, Ross.
Thank you for your question. First of all, we don't call that conflict. It is a Western narrative. So we call this war from, actually, it was an anti-terroristic operation in 2014, and we call it war from 2022. So I think that calling the conflict, it is the first step in this problem with Western narratives. Yes, Ukrainians are very angry. Yes, Ukrainians are angry when, for example, we get invitations to some roundtable, and we have invitations for Ukrainians and for Russians at the table. And Western scholars, for example, want us to discuss something. We are very angry at that moment. We're angry when we hear about like scholarships for scholars in risk. And that means Ukrainians, Russians, and people from Belarus. And these scholars are in completely different situations. We are really angry with that. I know that we didn't do enough. I mean, Ukrainians. So we didn't talk enough. We didn't communicate enough. We didn't have enough networking with scholars in the West, with the Western media, with Western politicians. That's why maybe these narratives could appear. I think there is our fault too in that, but I think that it could be changed with the new communications, and it could be changed when we stop people calling Kiev not Kyiv. So when we stop people calling the war conflict or civilian war or something like that. So it is, we react maybe too emotionally to that, but I think we have the right to do that.
Thanks, Tina. And what about the word invasion? Do you use that? Because I heard you say the what did you call it? You used the word invasion.
Full-scale invasion, yes.
Full-scale invasion, yeah. So
the war, it's okay for us. So full-scale invasion or the war, Russian-Ukrainian war.
Okay,
or
that's
Russian
really
invasion. It could be different.
Yeah, yes, of course, the Russian invasion, that makes more sense. That's good to know. Thank you for that. Now, I think we've got time for one more question to squeeze in. This is from Alex. Thanks, Alex, for asking. Hi, Tina. Thank you for a fascinating presentation. I was particularly interested in how the experience of time has changed throughout different moments of the war. I imagine, for instance, during blackouts and similar situations, that the passage of time feels a lot longer. During situations in which the war directly reaches the home front, such as with the missile strikes, does the passage of time feel as quick as it might during moments of intense conflict? I don't think he means it in that way, being reported on from relatively far away on the front lines. Does the proximity to violence influence how people experience the passage of time? Sorry for a long question. Thanks, Alex. Okay, that's another great question. Thank you.
It's a good reflection, actually. So I'm really thankful to you, Alexander. So I was trying to ask people about how do they feel time of war? And I have two completely different answers. The first answer is we still live in 24th of February. So this day is still here. So nothing changed. The other answer is everything is changing all the time. The war is completely different. The war last year, the war in summer, the war with blackouts are totally different wars. So different people react in a different way. For example, you can see this with food consumption. So someone started to eat more with the beginning of the war, and someone started to refuse from the food with the beginning of the war. People react in very different things, and maybe even one person could in one period could eat more and feel that the time is very slow, and in another period feel something completely different. So it is always changing, but different people react in a different way. I can do, maybe I'll read once more about home front. So, and does the passage of the time feel as quick as might it during moments of intense conflict? I think maybe I could tell only about myself. So at this moments, like time freeze. You keep reading media, you keep watching photos, you keep talking with people. Are you okay? Was you there? And time freeze maybe for a day or 2 days. And after that, the time just keep going again. Maybe it's my own reflection. I can't tell about other people.
That makes perfect sense, Tina. And I should note to listeners that I didn't mention this at the beginning, but Tina has a 6-month-old baby, which is, also incredible to be in this situation with such a young child, and your experience of the war with such a young child will be, very different from other people in the situation. Like Alex has said, thank you so much for your answer and being able to interpret my question. Fabulous. Thanks, Alex. Everybody will have to leave it there, but thank you so much to people who ask questions. They've been really useful. If you still have a question,